that Andy Macaulay was the CEO of Gade Oil and Gas. Iqbal Shwama was the director, and Salim Issa was the director. Can you tell me if in this company of yours any Gupta brothers were involved or any children of any Gupta were involved?
No, it was long before I came to Eskom. I was the owner of the company. I was the director, and Salim became the director because he was going to arrange for our prospecting, for our exploration, and so on in the car. That was all, 2 people.
So at no stage did you know that, or were you aware of any Gupta involvement through Salim Issa in that company?
No.
Chair, Dr. Ngubane, your wife is Sheila Ngubane, and together you own Huntrex 305, which owns Zululand Quarries, Natal Sands, and Hannes Investments. Now, it's been reported that 50 million rand was borrowed from the SOE Inklala Development Finance Corporation. Has that money in fact been paid back?
Chairperson, with due apologies, this matter is before court. It has nothing to do with Eskom or my role at Eskom. It happened in end of 2011, so I will not discuss that issue.
Chairperson, that's fine. Previous Minister of Minerals, Minister Ramatlodi, has very openly accused you, as well as Mr. Molefe, of trying to strong-arm him into withdrawing the Glencore mining licenses. Can you please explain the situation between the 3 of you?
Honorable Mazzone, Minister Ramatlodi suspended Glencore mining license. Glencore was supplying Hendrina, supplying Komati, supplying Anot power stations. He suspended them because they did not do retrenchments in the way that it was supposed to be done. We appealed to him not to do that because he was going to cause massive load shedding. That was what we discussed with him. Where it comes from, that we're forcing him to... In fact, how could we do that? We're in the midst of severe load shedding. How could we say, Minister, take away Glencore? Glencore has got 14 assets in coal mining, supplies a lot of stations in the Witbank coal basin. How could we say, put the lights out? Because that would have amounted to putting the lights out. I cannot understand how the minister came up with this idea because it's not logical. We could not ask him to throw this country into a national blackout. So I can't say he's lying, but I think it's miscommunication.
Dr. Ngubane, did you know of any meetings that took place in Switzerland with Minister of Mineral Resources, Minister Zwane, and any coal practitioners or coal mine executives?
No. In fact, I hardly ever get involved in that type of work. It's managerial, and if there's a decision to be made, it goes to PTC. So I had no knowledge, I read it in the newspapers.
Mr. Koma came here to our committee. In fact, he was one of the first people that testified. And during his testimony, he discussed with us your almost overprotective nature surrounding Mr. Molefe. In actual fact, he testified that on the day that Mr. Molefe was dismissed, you requested him and Suzanne Daniels to accompany you to go and give moral support to Mr. Molefe. Is this in fact true?
The only time I met Mr. Molefe after he had left Eskom was after the meeting with the minister, where the minister said, this 30 million thing is untenable. Let's go back and change it. Either Molefe must resign or he must agree to a lower payment. That is when, and Koma was not there. It was Suzanne, it was Veneta, it was myself who were dealing with those issues. There is no time when Koma accompanied me to see Molefe.
So there's a, Chairperson, just for the record, there's a disparity in the testimony there. On March the 2nd, that meeting on March the 2nd, it was in fact testimony of Ms. Daniels that you convened that meeting, and there is a recording to that extent. Do you deny that there was a unanimous decision taken at the meeting on the 2nd of March to suspend Mr. Kolko?
We agreed on that, but it was simply the modalities of dealing with the issue that became the question. We had agreed on that.
Now, Mr. Kolko went further on to say that you personally told him that Minister Brown had phoned you and told you that that suspension had to be lifted. Why would he come to this committee and lie?
No, I don't know. To me, Mr. Kolko said Mr. Khoza told him that at a party at Mr. Khoza's house, he had phoned the Guptas to ask the minister to instruct me. That's what, and I asked Khoza about this, and he denied it. He said there was no such thing. So the issue of minister talking to me came from Mr. Kolko saying that that's what Mr. Khoza had told him. So I don't know why he's doing that.
Let's discuss a little bit about this resignation, retirement, retrenchment of Mr. Molefe, because, you know, this still remains one of the greatest embarrassments in our country's record to date. Suzanne Daniels testified that she had marked up the offer of employment following a letter sent to Mr. Anton Minnar by DPE. It was clear from the inception that this was going to be a fixed-term contract. Why was this ever even brought into question? Because we've seen the original contract, and it clearly stated it was a fixed-term contract.
That was a later contract, after we had concluded on a permanent contract. So all these movements were trying to deal with that situation of initially permanent employment, subsequently going to a fixed-term contract.
Now, you see, Dr. Ngubane, I find this extremely disturbing, that there are contracts after contracts, before contracts, subcontracts, maybe contracts. I mean, was this the normal goings-on at an entity such as Eskom?
Initially, all we knew was that after the minister had given us authority that Molefe is going to be the group chief executive, that he was on permanent employment. There was no mention of any fixed term of contract. That is why he got registered on the Eskom Pension and Provident Fund, and that is why every month money was deducted for the Eskom Pension Fund. This came later, and then it complicated issues.
Dr. Ngubane, I'm afraid I don't buy that. And I put it to you, in fact, that this pension initiative markup was a scheme that was enacted as a get-rich-quick program. And I'd like your opinion on that.
Well, then you must assume that all of us at Eskom are crooks, are terrible people to think of such things. Why should we want to enrich Brian Molefe? Why should we? The only thing we were trying to deal with was this disgruntlement with a new situation where he had assumed it's permanent, then we tell him he's gone on fixed. In fact, he could have gone. He was very upset about that. So it was a matter of keeping him in, trying to work out a scheme that will be sustainable after 5 years.
Dr. Ngubane, let me ask you this. Why the obsession with keeping Brian Molefe in his position? And I would go so far as to say it's an obsession, given your reaction at the press conference where you shouted at people in the press conference because Mr. Molefe had a bit of a breakdown and had tears and had walked off the stage. And also the fact that there was a near physical incident between you and a reporter. And you screamed at that reporter for having done something to Mr. Molefe. So I want to know why this overprotectiveness and why this need to go out of your way to make sure that there was a pension scheme for Mr. Molefe?
You're making a lot of assumptions. At that time, we were on the cusp of a national blackout. Molefe had brought such joy to us and the country when people's food was not rotting in their refrigerators, where people can have normal lives. There was no one who could have turned Eskom at that stage that I know of in such a short period of time, reduce the expenditure on diesel, which was R1 billion a month, have fast-track the commissioning of Ingula, fast-track the commissioning of the first unit of Medupi, and fast-track the whole build program. It was a fantastic change from the billions that had been flowing out of Eskom through poor leadership. So I was excited by this as chairman.
Dr. Ngubane, I again have to put it to you that Eskom has gone through remarkable downgrades. They're in a state of complete and utter financial ruin. The board has been forcibly removed and replaced with a new board that's come in and immediately suspended people that were part of that board. I mean, you know, and this isn't my assumption, please understand, because I also, you know, I look at the fact that FEDUSA, you know, a very large union, requested that you yourself and Mr. Brian Molefe face a commission of inquiry. NUM, and I quote, said, "The entire board of Eskom is a disgrace to the power utility and the government." So how can we say that such a fantastic job was done when there was downgrade after downgrade and we faced an almost economic crash of this country thanks to Eskom?
When we came in, the problems were already there. They were there, they were big. The minister complained that at one stage, Chairman Sotsi, together with Machila, was the acting CEO, actually phoned her while she was having lunch, Christmas lunch, saying we will not be able to pay salaries end of January. It was on a precipice to disaster. Here comes Molefe. The international agencies, the funders, the people who buy Eskom bonds, go back to buying Eskom bonds. We accumulate enough money, we make an EBITDA of probably 30 billion. First time. And by the time I left, the finances were shooting up because we were having a buy-in from all the bondholders. I will put it to you that the devastation that came with Molefe's going away was a disaster for Eskom and the people of this country, because we were on a trajectory to change the whole situation. Then comes the acting people, then Eskom engineers and senior people start fighting, instability starts going. General Rakau was reporting to the minister, and I was at that meeting, and Suzanne was at that meeting, that people are almost killing each other at the power stations. So I knew you remove good leadership, you are calling for trouble. That's why I made an emotional statement. You said, I think this is dealing a blow, not only on Eskom, but the people of this country.
Right, Chair, we're going to have to agree to disagree on that point, because I'm of the opinion that me and many, many millions of South Africans don't think that the leadership at Eskom was in any way the leadership that we of the country deserve. Chair, I see that you're looking at me for time.
Sorry, can I answer to this?
Chair, it wasn't a question, it was a statement.
Okay.
Chairperson, and to Dr. Ngubane, I think you need to take ownership of what happened at Eskom. I think you need to accept that state capture is a very real thing that this committee has proved time and time again existed. State capture has almost ruined our country. Piece by piece, utilities were sold off to the highest bidder at the expense of South Africans. Dr. Ngubane, you were the chairperson of the SABC. It collapsed. You were the chairperson of the Land Bank. It collapsed. You were the chairperson of Eskom. It has collapsed. I would put it to you, sir, that you're a delinquent board member. And if I were you, I would certainly hang your head in shame and not make excuses for what has happened at Eskom. No further questions, Chair.
Can I allow
Yes,
such
you can.
denigration?
I allow you to respond
It's
to
a real
the
denigration of my service to this country. As Pagamani, who is now at Eskom, he was the CEO at Land Bank. We worked together, we recovered the Land Bank. No one was refusing to roll over their bonds. It shot through the sky. SAPC, you mentioned, was broke from 2007, totally broke. We raised money. We got advertisers to come back. When I left, we had paid off Nedbank 2 billion rand loan, which was supported by a government guarantee. Now, I don't know where you pick this. The press may write what they like. I've never been a favorite of anyone, of the press or anyone. But to now come and paint such a picture is ridiculous, because load shedding was stopped under our command. It changed the whole situation. The fact that NASA reduced the tariff and caused serious revenue gaps in Eskom is an issue that even this present board will have to deal with. The municipal debt, which is running into billions, is an issue that this present board will have to deal with. The pass-throughs to IPPs, which are in billions of rands, is an issue that this board will have to deal with. Unless they find another methodology, a new model, these problems will continue. They are not just with us.
Thank you, Dr. Ngubane.